here on LBC. You're listening to the James Caan Business Show. James, tell us about your guest this week.
Well, I'm delighted to have Rita Clifton on the show with us this evening. Rita's actually one of the world's leading experts on brand and branding, and actually worked for one of the leading companies on brand strategy. She was the vice chair and strategy director at Saatchi & Saatchi in the most successful period between 86 and 97, and more recently in the last 15 years as chief executive and chair at Interbrand, one of the world's leading brand consultancy. But also, Rita, I understand a few awards too. One of them, voted one of the 75 women for achievement in the field of advertising and media. And more recently, last year, actually got yourself a CBE, a clever business entrepreneur, I think is what it stands for.
Oh, you know how to flatter a woman, James, don't you?
Welcome,
yes,
Rita.
It's very nice. Thank you very much indeed. I'm very happy to be here.
I mean, Rita, what we want to do today is, I think one of the sort of subjects for entrepreneurs and business people, is branding and marketing. From your perspective, why is that so important for business?
Well, I think what we've got to remember is that your brand is the most important asset you'll have. It is going to be the only way you're going to generate long-term value. If you want to create a business where you can pass it on to your family or your colleagues or whatever, if you want to keep on generating some sustainable value, you've got to be building a brand. Now, people say to me, oh yeah, the brand's important, but actually our people are the most important thing. And I go,
I'm in that camp.
Are you in that camp? Okay, well, here's what I'll say to you. Organise to do what? Because unless you're trying to build a consistent idea together that's going to have some long-term effect and value, you're just a group of people doing stuff versus another group of people doing stuff. And the other thing about people, they have a nasty habit of dying.
And
or leaving.
Yeah.
Or leaving, or any of those things. And equally, when people say to me, oh, this brand malarkey, it's all a bit soft and fluffy, I'm all about the product. Well, the thing about products is they die too, or they become obsolete or redundant. So you've got to keep on building the brand that sits around all this stuff, the way you organise your people, the way you organise your company, everything you do that's going to build some kind of distinctive profile, some sort of competitive advantage, and that's particularly important for small businesses where you're not going to have great big fat marketing budgets. Everything you do is communication, and you've got to make sure you do all that right and really differently from everybody else.
Rita, what most business people and entrepreneurs say to me, that if they are a small business or they're starting out, how do they do that? Because if you don't have that big fat marketing budget, how does an entrepreneur or a small business try and build a brand?
Well, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to really decide what you're about, how you are positioned in a way that's different from your competitors. Now that is
called
relevant.
USP, is it?
It used to be called a USP. I've heard all sorts of different descriptions for what it is now, but you've got to have a distinctive proposition that makes you different from other people, and that is as relevant if you're a small startup business as a great big multinational business. What is it that you do that's different from other people, either in the stuff you make or the culture you've got in your people or where you are or how you're positioned? It can be any number of angles, but you've got to make sure that you are clear about how you're different, and all of your staff, all of your people have got to be aware of that difference too, and make sure they help you build that every day, from the way they answer the phone to the way they serve customers in a way that is distinctive. And sometimes people say to me, well, of course it's less relevant in the business to business sector, it's all very well these consumer businesses, but actually, the brand is even more important in the business to business sector, because your clients have got to trust you. They've got to trust your advice and what you say, and what's more, you've got to make them look good to whoever it is that they're dealing with at the other end. So branding in business to business, in financial services or whatever it is really important. And then the question is how you do it. So be clear about what you stand for, and what's more, make that show up. If you just think about Tesco, Think about Tesco and you think about...
How did you describe them? I read somewhere that you said they were the Margaret Thatcher or something.
I'm afraid I did say that.
What did you mean by that?
Well, I tell you what I meant by it, which is that Tesco built their reputation on being respected. In the early days, people quite liked them because they were a bit of consumer champion and pilot high and sell it cheap and everything else. When they got really big and whispers started coming out about them maybe bullying suppliers or maybe not treating people properly and everything else, that stuff spills out. Now, that's a real problem for big companies who maybe lose control of their culture and their people's behaviour on the inside. But it's a great opportunity for small companies, because if you're a small company with not a great big fat marketing budget, if you are brilliant at what you do, if you get your people to love what you do, if you get your customers to love what they do and what you're doing, they will tell other people. And that doesn't cost you anything. But you've got to be a really, really good business on the inside. And it's no use pretending you're a smiley customer service organisation on the outside if you're an axe-murdering culture on the inside.
No,
it doesn't work, and people talk about it in ways that you might not like.
So that, from your perspective, that's a bit about maintaining your reputation and making sure that you take pride and passion in what you do. Tell me, Rita, one of the things that I see a lot when people are coming up with a brand or an identity, they come up with lots of kind of obscure names. Do you think a brand in a business is, it says what it does on the tin? How relevant is that?
Well, there are lots of different ways that you can name a new company or a new product. And I'll talk about this as a brand name, not the brand, because the brand is everything you do that makes some sort of competitive difference, that builds some sort of sustainable value. It is everything you do. It's like the alter ego of business strategy. Okay, it's the way you go to market in this sort of different and distinctive way. The brand name is interesting because there's a whole range of possibilities. You can either just call it, as you say, what it says on the tin. British Airways, for example, that's pretty just descriptive, you call it. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got Orange. I mean, Orange had no relevance to the sector, to the telecom sector. It was just a freestanding name that people just came up with.
Like Apple?
Yeah, or just like Apple. I mean, actually, there's a lot of fruit, isn't there? There's a lot of fruit around in the technology
Blackberry.
sector.
Blackberry, that's right.
And somewhere in there's a whole fruit bowl, isn't there, of technology companies going on. And in the middle, there's something you might call associated names. So, Hobnobs. Now, Hobnobs is interesting because it sort of suggests what's in the product. It's a bit knobbly and, it's maybe a bit posh, or it certainly was when it was launched, to have with your tea. So it's not direct description and it's not, it's not totally weird. So you can choose a name from anywhere along that spectrum. The important thing is, of course, that not only has the name got some relevance, I mean, think about Orange, it was just left of field. Do you know what I mean? They wanted to be different. They just wanted to do something that was a bit lateral and out there. So you've got to make sure that it in some way represents who you're trying to be and what you're trying to stand for. And of course, you've got to make sure that you register it. You've got to make sure that you own that name, because otherwise you can spend a lot of time and money building the profile of that name, and someone could come along and say, don't do that.
Because I own it.
I own it. So you've got to be very careful. You've got to make sure you're protecting the asset that you're building, because, as I say, that's the thing that's going to generate some long-term value for you and a bit of sustainable wealth for the people that you might love or want to have, money after you've gone.
I mean, I'd like to hear from you today. If you're in a business or you're building a business and brand, marketing and PR is something that's important to you, call in today. Love to hear from you. And also, let's talk to Rita about her experience in the business market. So branding, marketing, if that's challenging, want to hear from you today.
0345 6060 973 is the number. Calls coming in. We'll take some in just a moment. One quick question, Rita. We were talking about Carphone earlier on, and it just made me think, does it matter if your name is actually sort of defunct in a way. I mean, people don't have car phones, and yet it is a successful brand.
Yeah. Well, that just exactly goes to show that a brand is so much more than its name. It's like saying, a person is more than their face and their name and their clothes. Brands are exactly the same. They've made people feel so many more things about car phone warehouse as a brand than, something that sits in a car, as you say, in a great big warehouse, because they've got neither of those two things anymore. But I have to say, in Britain, we've elevated cynicism about these sort of things to a fine art. There's lots of headlines that say, this company has spent £5 million on a squiggle, or, this company has spent £10 million. I tell you what, if some of these numbers had been right, I could have retired to the Caribbean several times over by now. So you can make a brand mean something that's very different from where the name started. I mean, if you were launching a company called Unilever now, you'd have said, ha, 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 that's a company that's operating just on one lever, it's not going to be successful. Do you know what I mean? We just get used to brand names, just like we got used to there being a computer called Apple and a telecom company called Orange. We've got used to these things, and just like we got used to the 2012 Olympics logo. Do you remember that?
Absolutely,
the London Olympics logo.
Yeah.
The kerfuffle there was about that, and then when it was successful, people just shut up.
Everybody got used to it. It's very true. Yeah. You're listening to the James Caan Business Show here on LBC. We'll take some calls in just a moment. We'd like your questions on branding and advice for your business. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call.
The James Caan Business Show on LBC.
Yes, you're listening to LBC, the James Caan Business Show, between now and 10, and special guest Rita Clifton, one of the world's leading experts on branding, and we've got Oliver in Maida Vale to talk to James and Rita. Hello, Oliver.
Hi, James and Rita and Clive.
Hi.
Hi.
What can we do for you?
I just wanted to get your opinions on more on social media in terms of branding. So I graduated university 2 years ago, and I started my company in fashion about a year ago. And our idea was we found a gap in the market to create the most perfect basic T-shirt, a very high quality one, so all production in Italy and Portugal. Anyway, we wanted to build the brand very organically, and we didn't focus on social media at all, and we still haven't done. And we've built a pretty good business with some good stockists, and we've had the likes of some of the biggest fashion magazines in the country, in the world even, write about us. And I wanted to get your opinions on how important social media actually is in building the brand, and whether it is completely relevant now, in your opinion.
Rita?
Well, for some businesses, it's difficult to underestimate the importance of social media, and particularly in the fashion business, because you want your brand to be seen on the right people. And if the right people love your brand, and they've got a lot of, whether it's Twitter followers, whether or not they're extremely popular and they get picked up by the mainstream media, it seems to me like you're already doing a really good job. I mean, your story reminds me a bit of morph suits. I'm looking at James. We met a couple of really interesting guys. I don't know whether you've seen this company, but basically they really got to understand their consumer. They understood that this was guys often going out on stag do's and, wearing fancy dress on Halloween. And they got the most fantastic stunts underway. So, for example, getting a load of guys in morph suits showing up to British Lions rugby tour, and of course the cameras were right on them, and that got around the instant. So it's a great way. It's a great way, of course, of making stuff happen on very little budget if people love what you're doing. So clearly you've got a great product there. If a lot of people are saying nice things about it, that is without doubt the best thing to do. Sometimes people say to me, talk about branding in the digital age, and they expect you to show lots of sexy YouTube videos and things like that. You go, do you know, here's the insight about branding in the digital age. You've got to run a really great business where people love what you do. Hopefully customers love what you do, and they will often nicely tell other customers that they love what you do too.
But I would, Oliver, I'd encourage them to say good things about you on social media, because I do think that it's something that people refer to. So, if your brand is good and people see visibility, on maybe a blogging site or Facebook or Twitter, it doesn't do any harm. I did a lot of that 2 years ago where I never really paid a lot of attention because I thought, I'm an investor. Why do I need Twitter followers? Why do I need social media? I'm not a consumer brand. But I felt if I'm going to build the business, if I'm going to create scale, then I need more awareness. And, I kind of made an effort to start tweeting. And I've now developed about 150,000 followers. And, I think it has helped the business. So I think anything that you can do that reinforces and strengthens your message to the market has to be a good thing.
Oliver, thank you very much. LBC, let's talk to Clifton in Wembley. Hello, Clifton.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, thanks. What's your question?
Okay, I run a fitness business. We specialize in weight loss, and we have 3 products. We do personal training, semi-private personal training, and boot camps. And we're looking to sort of rebrand our business because we want to go more for one-on-one personal training, more affluent clientele. And at the moment, we're not sort of getting that because I think it's to do with our marketing and our content and our copyright, and it's not really attracting that type of clientele. So I just want to find out any advice on how we can sort of go that way to sort of get the clientele which we want, basically.
What's your current brand at the moment?
When you say current brand, what
so you want to rebrand, so what are you called at the moment?
Well, the company's called Enlight Fitness.
Yeah.
And like I said, we do personal training and we do boot camps. But that is not really, the personal training side isn't really coming across properly. It's more, we're getting more boot camp people, which is fine.
Is that because of your brand or is that because of how you're marketing?
I think it's to do more with our website. The content on there doesn't sort of come across that we're a person. Actually, we do one-on-one personal training as a more of a luxury service. So if we're looking to do more of a luxury one-on-one personal training service.
So on that luxury stuff, so clearly you understand, or hopefully understand, who your customers are. So are they luxury type of customers? I mean, what sort of profile are the people that you're going after and that you've got a track record in?
Well, I mean, at the moment, it's more of it was a mix, doesn't really matter, but it's more of a female client, which is sort of 35 to 55 earning a good income. So that sort of, and then they really want to sort of take care of their body. They've got to that sort of stage where they're a bit overweight, but they want to have a more healthier lifestyle and lose a bit of weight, so to speak.
Do you think this sounds very relevant to me, actually? I think, I think understanding your current customer base, as you know, and what they do, what they like and everything else is a critically important part here, and it sounds like you're doing that. Also, just the question is, why would you want to do one-on-one? I mean, it seems like you've got a really interesting product in boot camps. Is it because you make a lot more money out of doing the one-on-ones, or
Right, yeah, and also because with one-on-one they tend to stay longer because the boot camp is more of a younger type of crowd, and they're very fickle. With one-on-one, you tend to find that they're like I said before, with the age group, and they're more into the sort of the lifestyle of getting fitter, and know that they're getting to the age where they have to take care of their body.
Well, I think you said earlier, you've got to think, right, if we want to attract these kind of luxury consumers of particular life stage, there are certain lovely things that they find attractive. You've got to look at everything you do to make sure that the vibes you're giving off are luxury type vibes. So how do you answer the phone? What does your website look like? Are you seen in the right places? And also, what about your customers themselves? Would they say lovely things about you? And do they look like the sort of customers that would attract other customers like them? So you really need to think about the whole experience you're giving off. Like luxury brands, they are absolutely control freaks. They want to make sure that every aspect of what they do for their customers, from the sort of staff they've got in their stores to where their shops might be. There's no point in being a scruffy old department store if you're trying to build a luxury brand. So think about every single aspect of what you're doing and how you're presenting yourself, including the trainers themselves, and just think about every way in which you can ratchet it up a notch.
All right. Well, good luck, Clifton. With that, thank you very much. 0345 6060 973 is the number. Andrew's in Lincolnshire. Hello, Andrew.
Hello. I have a question. We've got a business. We're now in our fifth year of trading. It's predominantly a design service for infrastructure, mainly electrical, for highway type work. What I'm failing to get, and what I'm trying to get into, is local authorities. And when I have spoken to them, they've come back and they say they're looking for turnkey. They've got current contracts, obviously, but what they'll do, they'll go for one of the big players. And when I said, well, all these small little bits of which we designed for, they said basically their staff wouldn't want to manage small companies. They just want somebody who can do them everything.
Andrew, that's a really good question. I think one of the things that I've noticed on the government website is the government now are actually saying that they are targeting 25% of government contracts should be now awarded to small businesses. So it's actually a stated policy by government. So I think one of the things that you ought to, when you do speak to them, is maybe remind them that whilst it's great to give contracts to big companies, but actually the government have made a stated policy on that, and maybe you should sort of remind them that if you have got a service that's credible, professional and competitive, I mean, we can't force them to use any particular company, but actually a reason not to use you because you're small, I don't think is a good enough reason.
Well, I've actually heard that from council officials, and the work that we currently have, it's all done in the private sector, and it's all repeat business, and it's all based on recommendation, purely recommendation. We just cannot seem to break in. I'm looking.
So should Andrew keep at it, do you think?
Well, it depends whether or not you can get some profitable business from this particular client. I mean, you say you've got lots of business in the private sector. Well, the public sector may be a bit more challenging. So I suppose part of the question is, are they really, is that really going to be your future customer? And the second thing is to make sure you're making an advantage out of being small, because you can present yourself as more nimble and hungrier, more responsive, and there are all sorts of advantages you can present about why they should go with a smaller business. But obviously they want to make sure you're going to be there tomorrow. So, financial security and, long-term endorsements from other organisations or businesses, all these will really help with the sell.
OK, Andrew, thank you very much indeed. We'll take more calls in just a moment. 0345 6060 973 is the number. Rita Clifton is here on the James Caan Business Show on LBC. I'm Clive Bull, and the time 9:45. Duncan will be here at 10 o'clock here on LBC. I'm Clive Bull. This is the James Caan Business Show. And with us is Rita Clifton. And we're talking about branding.
Branding and marketing. Rita, one of the questions I had for you, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I interact with quite regularly are constantly asking me the question about, in today's world, how do we advertise? Because I know when I started a business, it was all about, running ads in the paper or doing leaflets, etc. But now it's more about kind of technology, Google, etc. So if I was a business and had a small budget, what would you say was the best way of using that?
Well,
what would I do?
The first question you've got to ask yourself is, who are my target customers? I know it's a completely obvious question, but you'll be very surprised, but even mature businesses sometimes forget about their customers. So first and foremost, you've got to think about, who are my customers? What do they like to do? Where are they? How can I connect with them? And that will tell you what you need to do with your budget. And also, you talk about budget. Sometimes you don't need a budget if you know the right people, or otherwise you've got something that people love. So, for example, there was a company that was making sausages that happened to be mentioned by a very famous chef. That went out on her Twitter account, and of course you suddenly got people interested in these sausages because they were delicious, they tasted great. The Cambridge Satchel Company, I don't know whether the listeners have heard about this company, but essentially this was a woman who just started making satchels because she needed some extra money for her children's education and various
she's
other
doing
things.
amazingly well at the moment.
She's doing amazingly well. This is now a £10 million plus business, and her big breakthrough is that actually Alexa Chung decided that she really loved these satchels and she started wearing it. And of course Alexa Chung has got loads of social media followers. Now fashion is very particular because fashion obviously very visual and it's very social, so those things go together. Instagram, particularly for young women, is particularly important right now because of course young women, they respond to tips and trends and visual stimuli, and you can really edit what it is that you want people to see. So a lot of these things do not cost a lot of money, and that's again one of the huge advantages of today's social media climate, is that if you've got a great idea, you can get it out there supported by the right people for not very much money at all. And advertising, the death of advertising has been a bit exaggerated, to say the least. I mean, when people say to me, oh, advertising is dead, it's all about Google and social media, well, if you just look at John Lewis, for example, John Lewis did an amazing job of getting in a mainstream break. They also got an ad that people wanted to share and show to other people. I mean, they might have spent quite a lot of money on that break, but it was magnified and amplified many times over on social media. So, of course, you might want to do both. And sometimes you just do a great ad, then get people to share it. You do a little video, a fun video. If you just look at what's on some YouTube, on YouTube, some of them are such fun and been done with such pizzazz that actually people want to share them. That doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Engaging people, thrilling them, entertaining them, making it fun, making it interesting, and making people want to share. That is by far the best form of advertising. And you don't have to be a global giant to have a big fat marketing budget.
One of the things that I'm doing right now, which I'm finding really working well, is the use of video. So before, when we had our website, it was quite static, but it had graphics and visuals. But now we started to incorporate video onto the website, and I've noticed that we're getting a lot more hits on the website, because you're right, if you've got something more dramatic, more interesting, people stay on the site longer, but also it gets your message across easier. And what I found is the cost of producing video today is not even, it's less than a tenth of what it used to cost.
Absolutely. And of course, you can do self-editing. I'm sure you've got mates and friends who are really interested in shooting videos and showing off some of their creative talents. So if you produce something that, your customers are interested in, something that's relevant, and make sure that you get it passed on and, get people liking it and sharing it and everything else. As I say, it does not have to cost a lot of money. And there are lots of stories of people who come up with, new websites for 300 quid. We talked about morph suits, those guys earlier. That's what their first corporate website cost them.
Fantastic.
But they had great chatter. They had great stunts, which again, people were prepared to share. That's the key here.
Let's squeeze in a couple more calls, shall we? We've got Robert in Woodford Green. Hello, Robert.
Oh, hello. Yes, hi.
Hi, go ahead.
Yeah, well, my question to Rita. Rita, for small businesses such as my own, we're going through a rebranding process at this moment in time, and what I wanted to know is how important are straplines for small businesses, people that we don't have, as you touched on earlier, massive marketing budgets like the corporate giants. So how do we get our message across in those, in those 10 seconds, and is a strapline important?
Well, okay, here's the boring answer, which is, of course, it depends. It depends, because I have seen more bad, bland straplines than, I would like to in a lifetime. And if I see one more strapline that's somehow, together into the future, or one of those blah, blah, blah straplines, I think I'm going to go and stab myself. But what I would say is rather think about how do you describe your business. I mean, one of the best strap lines, certainly that I've worked with in my career, was British Airways, the world's favourite airline. And, when it was first launched, people scoffed a bit at it. But actually, the data and research, it really stuck. And what's more, it surprised people because at the time, people didn't think that British Airways was any good. However, they did find a lot of people who did love British Airways, and it really made a huge statement. So, for example, I don't know much about your business, but, it might be that you're, the entrepreneur's favourite partner. I mean, there might be something you can say about yourself that actually is concrete, that's a great fact, that is going to do something for your business. So when people say strap lines to me, I'm afraid sometimes I can just slump and think, please don't do another one of those bland, mean nothing, could be applied to any business. Think about more of a descriptive line or a claim. Are you the most fun? Are you, the liveliest? Are you the most successful? Are you the favourite? Are you the most popular? Find something that you can say about yourself that's got some substance as opposed to flim-flam and,
Yeah, don't be bland. It sounds like the advice there, Robert. Thank you very much. Let's squeeze in Jules in St Albans. Hello, Jules.
Hi. Hello, Rita, and hello, James. I set up a small publishing house. I'm actually based in Sweden about 18 months ago, and I decided at the time I wanted to produce a very luxurious coffee table edition for children and adults of a book series I've written, and produced the book, which is beautiful, and also I produced a short film, a bit like James was saying, short film shot in Sweden of the actual location and the dogs who are characters in the book, put it on a very high-spec website, and it all went very, very well, and I branded it as a publishing house. And since then, we've had a lot of great success. I've won a book award. I've been nominated for some shortlisted prizes. However, I sometimes feel on social media, which I do heavily, and I've got a great following now, I sometimes feel as though I sell myself short because I am actually one mother of 3 children who has spent hours becoming a very sort of productive entrepreneur. And possibly I am selling myself short by presenting myself as this big publishing house. And do you think there'll be more benefits to me actually making my brand something more personal than this big industry brand? Do you see what I mean?
I think you could go either way, actually, because I can see the benefits of giving yourself a much bigger corporate profile because you think you're going to appeal to a much bigger market. So lots and lots of businesses, Jules, do that where they start out and they want to give across a much more corporate image, and I can see why that works because... But I think the key question is, who is your market? Who are you targeting? And if that market is more likely to buy a corporate message, or is your market more interested in buying, that kind of small personalised service? So, I would probably say, Rita, it really depends on what Jules's market is.
It absolutely does. And it also depends on what your story is. I mean, there was a woman, wasn't there, with quite a powerful story who happens to be a multi-billionairess.
Was it called Harry Potter or something?
Possibly be that. But, the story really counted. And these are ways in which you can really make your brand stand out from other people's. Every great brand starts with a great story. It's a bit like innocent drinks. I'm sure you know the story there. These are some guys who got together and made some drinks and asked the public at a festival whether or not they should leave their day jobs and go and make these drinks. That's their story to start with, and I think you might have a really good one. But let's see who that appeals to too.
Well, there we are. We're out of time. It's sped past again, but thank you very much, Rita. James, we'll see you again next week. Another James Caan Business Show coming up next week at the same time. And don't forget, if you've missed any of today's show, there's our podcast service at lbc.co.uk. Coming up at 1, it's Ollie Mann, but coming next, Duncan Bucks.